Hey, Richest Money Maniacs, welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about what would small government actually look like in a pandemic. Pretty interesting stuff. Let's get right to it. Hey, Richest Money Maniacs, welcome back. Tom coming at you. In this video, I have a very interesting topic to talk about. What would small government look like in a pandemic? You know, it's really interesting right now because we're so used to the idea of government being so powerful. We've all grown up with it that nobody even begins to even question whether it could be different or could be anything else. But actually, the United States Constitution set us up to be a republic and give the people the power with the state below that and then the federal government even below that. But then people say, well, that's when you have monopolies and that's when you have trusts and that's when you have big corporations take over and they poison the environment and they cheat people out of money and they hire for too little and you can't work, and that's when even in the coal mines you had people working for buying from the company store and they couldn't barely even afford to live, and so they were forced into working. The fact of the matter is, in a free country, you don't have to do those things. You don't have to work in the coal mine. You don't have to work at the company store. You could go to a different city or a different state and build a new life. In fact, that's how the United States got started in the first place. So that whole argument about trusts and big corporations, I mean, come on. If somebody had a monopoly, and they do, if people have monopolies, then don't participate. Don't buy their product. Don't use whatever it is that they're offering. Shut off the television. Turn off the internet. Don't buy the Apple phone if you don't like the fact that they have such a huge portion of the marketplace. If you don't like the fact that GMO foods are everywhere, grow your own food. I mean, that used to be the idea of the United States, was that if you didn't like something, you had the right to go ahead and do something different. And then usually what would happen is if you did something different and it really looked good, others would join you. Now, what about a pandemic? You've got the entire world worried about their health and spreading, these germs and these viruses becoming more and more deadly. Just as a side note, these deadly viruses, I don't believe that they're really becoming worse and more deadly. I think that what's really occurring, and this is just my humble opinion because I am not a doctor and I am not any kind of fancy word that has studied viruses and bacteria. However, the common sense thing that I see in the world is that a lot of the world has allowed themselves to become very weak in their immune systems and very vulnerable to their health because they're so used to being able to just go to the doctor and get a pill, or go to the doctor and get a treatment, or go to the doctor and get a surgery. I mean, it really, when it comes down to it, your body is supposed to be able to fight stuff off, even really bad stuff. But I'm not a doctor, and what do I know? That's just my common sense take on it. So back to the idea of what a small government would look like during a pandemic. Well, a small government would not have the power to shut down all of the businesses. A small government would not even have the funding to be able to send out armed troops to make sure that everybody stays calm. Instead, a small government would only be able to advise and update and present facts, present information. A small government would be so limited in power that they really couldn't do much about it at all. And so what it really would have to happen is that people would have to actually communicate transparently and tell the truth and be honest, and then actually consider the health of their neighbor and be considerate to each other. They wouldn't be able to turn around and say, well, that's not my job, it's the government's job, so I'm just going to let the government worry about it. So a lot of Americans have forgotten that we are the government. The Constitution made it so. In fact, we're the only country on the entire planet that's true. We are the government. We are the sovereigns of the nation. So What happens though in a pandemic? Somebody's got to step in and do something. You've got to have a higher authority organize everything. No, that's not true at all, because you have city government that helps. You have county government that helps. You have state government that helps. You have federal government that can help provide information and communication. And that should be it. It should be up to every single individual in this country to do what they feel is best to help subside the situation. Now, what am I saying? That's ridiculous. So many people would die. So many people would die from this. You know what? Nature doesn't care. It's going to find a way. And you know what? As far as nature is concerned, every virus, every bacteria, every germ has as much right to live as you do. There's nothing special about you when nature thinks about us. Nature thinks about everything in the ecosystem. And that's where the government falls short. That's where elected officials always fall short. That's where Federal Reserve and central banking systems always fall short, because they don't know everything. They couldn't possibly understand all the moving parts of a global economy, let alone a national economy or a microbiome, a body's economy, your constitutional health and your constitutional balance and your health balance. There's just no way. There's too many moving parts for each individual. So every time you have government come down and make a sweeping generalization that everybody has to stay home, that's not always the best situation for a lot of people. So without going too much further into that, the idea here is, what would it look like then with a pandemic? You would have neighborhoods that come together and work together. You would have cities and counties and zip codes of people that would gather and make decisions or use technology to help each other. And if certain individuals insist on going out in public, then they would be allowed to go out in public. Go out in public, but please, you are not going to be able to lay the responsibility for whatever happens to you or your family on anybody else. You're going to have to take responsibility for the consequences. Now, if you're a business owner, then you may reshape your business so that, like the restaurants that are still allowed to be open, you may say, instead of letting people come up to your counter, you may say, you know what? You have to pay online, and you have to text me before you come so that I can leave it out for you and sanitize the bag. And then when you come, it'll be a window that I've built so that only you can get it open when I see that it's you, and you show me your ID, and then and you text, and then I'll have it waiting for you, and then you can get that, and then I sanitize that inside again so it's clean. So it would be up to each individual business owner to decide how to change their business model so it fit the pandemic environment. Would they allow people to come in and sit at their tables? If they did, they probably would make them sit far away so everybody felt comfortable, which means their tables would fill up really fast, which means you'd have a waiting list. So you can't come in, because you can't come in at 4 o'clock, you have to come in at 4:15, because we already have all of our tables full at 4. And if you walk in, well, we have to turn you away, because, we're allowed to turn people away. Oh, and by the way, you don't have a mask on, so we're going to turn you away. Our business is open. Yeah, we're still doing business, and we have masks on because we believe in making sure that we flatten the curve as much as possible. But you can't come in because you refuse to wear a mask. It's a free country, so you can walk down the street to somebody else if you want to go there and take that chance. But if you want to come here, you have to have a mask. You see, it's a very different model. You don't need the government to tell everybody what to do or how to run their business or how to run their lives. It's not their job to tell me or you how to run our lives, even in a pandemic. Guess what? I am home, quarantining, locked down, not because I'm being told to, but because I believe it's the right thing to do. Not because it's a law. In fact, the more laws that are passed about quarantining and locking down, the more I'm starting to think I'm going to go outside just to bum some people out. I'm really getting tired of being told by the government how to live my life. if I want to take that chance, that's my prerogative, as long as I don't infringe on somebody else's rights, which means that as long as I stay away from others and I go and I don't, if someone comes near me, don't come near. I'm self-quarantining, I want to respect your rights. I want to respect your right to be outside. If you want to wear a mask too, go for it. I'm going to wear a mask, or maybe I don't feel like wearing a mask today. I feel like, I think I'm strong enough, healthy enough that it shouldn't be a challenge. So a government would only offer updates, communication, and information and advise folks. They would advise businesses. They would advise consumers. They would advise suppliers. They would advise their citizens, the sovereign citizens of the nation. And those people would have to take that information and make their own decisions. And they have the right to do that. They're God-given rights. You can't take those away. It doesn't matter. Any law that's written that is in conflict with the Constitution is absolutely void at its inception. Look it up. So think about that for a second. Now, part of the challenge, of course, you're probably saying is that, well, not everybody's as nice as you or as considerate as you. Well, those are probably the people that would become infected. And of course, then you have the hospitals being overrun. And then when the hospitals get overrun, people are just sent home to die because they can't be taken care of. There's just not enough beds. There's not enough ventilators. There's no medicine because China and India are shut down. Okay, so what happens? After a while, people take it more seriously. And guess what they do? They stay home. They actually start using the masks. They actually start washing their hands. But it's not fair. All those people died. It's not about being fair. This is nature. This is the way nature works. You either are strong and have a strong immune system and have taken care of yourself, or you haven't. And if you're older and you have ailments, then don't go out. But you don't need the government to tell you not to go out. I suspect that if you know you have a weak respiratory system, you probably self-quarantined right away and started working from home as quickly as you could. You probably spoke with your employer long before the government ever said anything. So remember, a small government in a pandemic would be just fine, because eventually the populace would realize the severity of the situation. And they would make sure that they take their own measures to make sure that everybody stays as safe as they can. And I'm not saying that the city would tell you what to do. I'm saying that each individual would say in their own mind and in their own heart, you know what? I'm going to stay home. I'm going to work from home until we hear some more about where things stand. I'm going to make sure I keep using the hand sanitizer. I'm going to keep washing my hands. I think I'm going to wear a mask for a while too. It seems like a lot of people have been sick around me lately. I'm going to talk to my employer. This is pretty serious. And you know what? The employer probably would say, yeah, work from home, because you know what? I don't want to have to pay for the insurance if you get sick. So that is what a small government could look like during a pandemic. It could actually work just fine, and you wouldn't have near the crisis that you have right now. The mistaken notion that a lot of folks have is that if not for large government, if not for big government, people would not do the right thing. And I think that's a horrible way to think about humanity. I think much more it's important to remember that humanity actually does the right thing on a very regular basis. In fact, I think another video I'll have to do will be about how the media makes you think that humanity does not do the right thing. Actually, the fact of the matter is, more often, in fact, probably 98% of the time, most people on this planet do the right thing. They always are thinking in terms of not only themselves, but their neighbors and their families, because the people that they live around are people that they care about. Most people care about their neighbors. There's only a very small percentage of people who just don't care about anybody, not even themselves. So, with that said, remember that a small government model not only could, but would work really, really well. And it would force the individuals in this country to realize the responsibility they have for their own life. And if everybody took responsibility for their own life, guess what? We wouldn't need all of this totalitarian, socialist, communist thinking. You'd be able to actually decide for yourself and feel good about it. So I hope that you found this helpful. I hope that you enjoyed the video and maybe it gave you something to think about and chew on. If you disagree with me, tell me in the comments. I would love to have a discussion with you. I always love learning new things. And if you haven't already, make sure that you give a thumbs up for the video and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.